What is up? And welcome to the DynastyLeagueFootball.com YouTube channel's special preview of all 32 teams. And today we are going to a team that has been in the news quite a lot, has had quite an offseason, the Indianapolis Colts. We're going down there. We're going to talk about a brand new quarterback to start this year. Didn't think it was going to be Jacob Eason, though. And, going to talk about that battle. Any other battles, a lot of storylines, talk about the offensive line, some of the injuries, of course, really important draft picks in the second round last year in Pittman and Jonathan Taylor to talk about. And who's going to lead this team in targets? Maybe him. Who's going to lead the rushing attempts? Probably him, but what can we expect out of them? And we'll get to all that with some really smart football people that I'll introduce you to right after this video. It's an interesting time to be talking about the Indianapolis Colts. Henry, I don't know. Sure. I don't know if I call it a disaster, Henry. It's definitely been a disaster.
I'm with you, Henry. That's how I feel, buddy.
I guess it could have been worse, like the 5 to 12 weeks. It's not a death sentence. I mean, there's still some hope, I guess. And we'll find out if these guys who follow the Colts closely have much hope. But I'll start introducing. I'm going to start with the man down below here. We got Mr. at FF_RTDB, as it says right there. We got Jacob. He is so much fun to watch. He's got a show that he does on Dynasty Vipers that I really love, but he's also a lead analyst over at Roto Underworld. Has a lot of stuff going on. Jacob, how are you today?
Man, I'm good, Cal, and I'm happy to be here. I would have been happier to be here, in a state of blissful ignorance about a couple weeks ago, back when I was trash talking Titans fans on Twitter, back when I was making bets with people about the Colts, making sure they have better records than the Steelers. I think I have one riding on that. Look, it's been a tough couple of weeks. Every time I log into Twitter and I see an Adam Schefter notification, I now have post-traumatic stress disorder. So he's no longer allowed to tweet without me feeling anxious that another Colt has suffered the exact same foot injury. However, we're pulling through. And, I think sometimes talking through it is the best therapy. I can't think of a better way to get through it than with you two tonight.
Yeah, the man to my left here, most people wouldn't know this, but I have probably done more shows with Mike than any other person on the planet, going back, like 10 years almost, it seems like, Mike. We started doing some shows together, so always good to be in the saddle talking to you about the Colts. We did this a few months ago before the offseason. It's been eventful. There's been a lot of things going on, but you're with you got PFF, you got a lot Football Absurdity, Dynasty Vipers, a lot of places that you're at. Where else might we find your work?
Roto Underworld is another one, and then I'm having 2 draft kits come out or already out. Fantasy Doctors is one where we team up with Fantasy Guru. And then, of course, Die Hard's Pro Forecast. I'm also in that as well. So, yeah, anywhere like that. Fantasy Intervention, Undroppables. I mean, I'm spread out everywhere. and it's great, Cal. I mean, anytime, we get to do this, I absolutely love it. We could talk spaghetti and be like, let's do it. Let's talk about the meatballs. But, it's great to be with you again, Cal.
Exactly. And I respect a lot of your work. And Jacob, I'm learning more and more about you over the last few months and respect a lot of what you do. Watch your show with Tyler Karp, who I know well, and your show on Dynasty Vipers. Yeah, the Dynasty Tilt. Yep. It's been a lot of fun to follow along with there too. So let's get right into the storylines and camp battles going on. A lot of things to discuss. What do you think jumps out to you the most, Jacob?
Yeah, so I mean, let's just be real, right? It's the quarterback position now. There was a time where we got to think about who's going to play slot wide receiver, who's going to be the tight end. But right now, all eyes are on the quarterback position. We don't know how long Carson Wentz is going to be out. Who knows, right? Maybe he's out there week 1. It hasn't been ruled out. I'm working under the assumption that it is going to be the later side of the 5 to 12 timeline. I'm thinking probably 8 to 10 is the most accurate range. So I'm predicting probably 3 to 5 weeks of a non-Carson Wentz quarterback. Who's that going to be? Jacob Eason, pretty clearly the leader in the clubhouse. And I think that his odds of starting week 1 depend on 2 things. I think that number 1, it depends on him playing half decently in practice and not giving the team a reason to lose all hope completely in his abilities. And then number 2, I think that it relies on Carson Wentz looking like he's going to beat his timetable. If they start to really feel pessimistic about Wentz, that he's going to be at the 12-week mark or even later, that's where I think they start to panic mode. They start to look into trades. If they're only thinking Wentz is going to miss between 2 and 4 weeks, I think it behooves the Colts to get a look at a quarterback that they took in the 4th round that they've been developing for 2 years. Why not see what you have in Jacob Eason? Any quarterback that you go out and trade for, you're probably not going to be able to get without giving up a legitimate asset for at this point if they're a major improvement over Eason, like a Brissett, like a Garoppolo, like one of those higher end backups, right? Not Nick Foles. So if you're starting to go into that tier, it's going to cost you something. Why would you do that for 2 to 4 games? Let's get a look at Eason. I think he has definitely he's in the catbird seat over Sam Ehlinger, over Brett Hundley. But we'll see, man. I mean, Eason has struggled in practice so far from what I'm reading in the beat reports. He's a guy that has a big cannon of an arm, but he really struggled with accuracy and decision-making, both at the University of Georgia and then at the University of Washington. The camp reports on him last year were not particularly positive. They never even made him active for a game, sitting behind Phillip Rivers and Jacoby Brissett. They gave him virtually no opportunity to compete for the job or show he's ready for the job this year when Phillip Rivers retired. So I'm not overly bullish on anyone in this offense for as long as Jacob Eason's under center, but I do expect to see him under center nonetheless.
One of the reasons I love having Mike on is I know he pays a lot of attention to the college game. And so, fans of the NFL, fans of the Colts may not know as much about Jacob Eason or Sam Ehlinger for that matter. Mike, what do you think? What can fans expect out of those 2 quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think, Jacob pretty much hit it on the head as far as Jacob Eason goes. Also, he was the same guy that lost out to Jake Fromm, Yeah. So it's like, well, he can't even beat out.
How did I not make that team? They had Jacob Eason, Jake Fromm. Why was Jacob Sanderson not invited to the University of Georgia camp that year? Come on.
Exactly. So, and then you have Sam Ehlinger, who is very mobile. And he has a good arm, but it's he just. There's just that he has that it factor, but he just doesn't have all the intangibles combined to make himself a top quarterback. And it was one of the reasons why he was drafted in the 6th round. Very much like if you guys want to make a comparison, think of, and you'll like this, Cal, Taysom Hill with a stronger arm. But with just doesn't have those quarterback intangibles. So those are the 2 guys. Yeah, I think it's Jacob Eason. I don't really have much else to add that Jacob didn't cover, so that's. Do you have a Brett Hundley take? No, that he's bad. Other than that, no, not really.
My take on Brett Hundley is that I know just how bad Brett Hundley is because I'm very familiar with Chris Streveler, the guy who beat Brett Hundley for the backup job in Arizona. Look, I'm up here in Canada, so shout out to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Their season and their Grey Cup defense starts tomorrow. Chris Streveler, before going to the NFL, was the backup quarterback for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers of the Canadian Football League. He could not start. In fact, we had to make a trade at the deadline to replace him mid-season because our quarterback got hurt. Streveler came in. He was so bad that we had to go out and make a trade to replace him at the deadline, and then we ended up winning the Grey Cup that year. Streveler, super mobile, super fun, rocks a fur coat, but he was not good enough to start the CFL, and yet he was good enough to beat out Brett Hundley for the backup job in Arizona. So I do not feel very confident about Brett Hundley.
No.
Little known fact about Sam Ehlinger, one of 3 college football quarterbacks ever to have 90 passing touchdowns and 30 rushing touchdowns. The others...
What you're saying is he started a lot of games in the Big 12.
Yeah. The others being the stallions of Dan LeFleur and JT Barrett. So
Dan LeFever, who also played on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
There you go. Look at the connections. He did a lot, but Jacob Eason did have some people who were in his camp last year saying like, hey, here's a guy that could develop into something. So at least like you guys said, you kind of get an idea of that. And hey, at least you got that offensive line, like that can go out there with
Cal.
Quentin Nelson, who, was on pace to be the NFL's highest paid guard, first player since Barry Sanders to be named to an All-Pro in his first 3 seasons. I mean,
What a guy.
And then the same injury that Carson Wentz had. So weird. Like, what does this do? Obviously, to, we're going to talk about the running backs, but like, just first take on, are people overreacting to Jonathan Taylor right now, Jacob?
Yeah, a little bit. So I actually think people were too high on Jonathan Taylor in redraft anyway. And that hurts my heart to say it because I love Jonathan Taylor dearly. I was planning to buy a Jonathan Taylor jersey, especially after these beautiful retros just got released. But from a redraft perspective, it's just his case a little bit fragile to me. And I don't think that people are necessarily lowering him for the right reasons even. What I'm seeing is, now because Quentin Nelson's gone, he's never going to have a running lane. I think that's a little bit of an overreaction, especially if Fisher comes back earlier and Braden Smith has been banged up too, but I think he's going to start the season. They're still going to have Kelly there at center. My issue is just Jonathan Taylor is far more precarious than most of the first-round running backs because I don't care how good he is. Nyheim Hines is an extremely capable passing down back. And if they're trailing by multiple touchdowns in the fourth quarters of games, we saw it in the wild card game. Nyheim Hines is going to get the bulk of the snaps in that situation. And I don't think that that's going to change no matter how good Jonathan Taylor is. So I view him more along the lines of a Nick Chubb, a Derrick Henry, where he's an exceptional player, but he can get game scripted out. And if Jacob Eason is a disaster, and if Quentin Nelson being out hurts this offensive line, hurts the team overall, if Darius Leonard's injury lingers and the defense gets hurt, like if they're just losing games, then Taylor's not going to be a good fantasy option. And I don't want to take a guy in the first round where if I turn on the game at halftime, Colts are down by 10, I know I'm getting probably 3 points for the second half. That's extremely concerning to me. So I think people were too high on Jonathan Taylor in general. I'm seeing him fall to like the very late second now in best ball drafts. I'm very okay with that price tag. I'm okay buying the dip on that, but it is a legitimate concern.
Yeah, that is pretty late for him, no doubt. Mike, you were pretty early on this. I think you were a little lower on Jonathan Taylor before it was cool, and I think it had to do a lot with the same things that Jacob said right there, like his uses in the passing game. He had more catches than I think people realized last year. But what's your in general take on Jonathan Taylor, who you agree is really, really good? It just, it's just, maybe not as high as maybe Twitterverse is.
Yeah, I've always sort of been on the pessimistic end when it comes to Jonathan Taylor, mostly due to the fact that we really don't know who this guy is. He came out last year and was bad, really bad. A lot of people were thinking, okay, this guy might have vision problems. There was a lot of comparisons to Trent Richardson do that effect. And I'm like, okay, wait. Before we go there, let's just, give this guy some time, hold off. And it took until week 10 against Green Bay, where a game he didn't even start. They gave the start to Nyheim Hines. And he came in and just blew the barn doors off and was excellent. And then after that, he was what everybody was hoping he would be. But I'm sitting there going, okay, yeah, he's doing good things. He's running well. He's seeing the holes and doing those things. But who's he seeing these holes against? Houston twice, Jacksonville, Pittsburgh on the down end of their season. So they're playing all these teams that he's doing great, but they're not competitive. They're not great defenses. So really, we're still stuck from after just 1 year is who is Jonathan Taylor? And that's one of the reasons why I'm sort of even pessimistic this season. Before these injuries happened to Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson, I was just like, okay, we know he has the skills, but we still don't know what he can put on the field after, a Jekyll and Hyde first season. And then, we have these situations now come up, and I'm like, okay, if you believe he's one way in Dynasty, don't change your mind now because of injuries to Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson. That's just this year. Dynasty is for the long term. So hold your belief. In redraft, you got to put him down. You got to draft. I have him as an RB17 right now in redraft.
Oh, my gosh. Wow, that's real low.
That is low.
I'm not nearly that low. He's still RB9 for me in redraft.
The reason being is Quentin Nelson. When you have a gap runner that Jonathan Taylor is, and and was so successful running behind Quentin Nelson, but I mean, who really wouldn't be running behind Quentin Nelson? And he goes down, and that's your centerpiece. That's the guy that blocks in front of you, and you lose that. Then you're you're losing a very special player, and then now you don't have a quarterback, and they're going to load up the box anyway. So I pushed him down. That's fine. RB9 or whatever. Just my belief is an RB17. So that's where I have him redraft. But keep him the same way you keep him in Dynasty. That should not change one bit.
I agree with you on Dynasty. And for the record, there's not that huge of a gap between my RB9 and my RB17. Like where I have Taylor right now overall is pretty much behind all of the elite wide receivers. And so where I'm comfortable taking him is towards the end of the second round. And then there's kind of a clump of running backs there. So I don't know. I'm not sure I could get down all the way to 17, but he's not that far ahead for me of guys like Mixon and Chubb, Najee Harris, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like that next year that he rests just a little bit ahead of for me. I mean, what we saw with Taylor, he's 100% right. Like we saw Taylor last year is it pops off the screen when he has a good run because he has a blend of speed, burst, and power that is nearly unmatched in the NFL outside of like Saquon Barkley right now. It really, really pops off the screen. But where he struggled was his vision, his play recognition, and he didn't flash a ton of wiggle at times last year, and he looked a little bit indecisive. So when he has the running lanes, and that was something I was not concerned about coming into the year, was him having running lanes because of Big Q, number 56, like Mike was mentioning. So it's a concern. If he's facing stack boxes, and he will be no matter what this year they do at the quarterback position, and they're not blocking for him, I'm not 100% sure that he can create a ton on his own when not much is there. He needs to prove that he can do that. He had wide lanes at Wisconsin. He had wide lanes last year. I'm not saying he can't do it, but he hasn't proven that yet. What I do know is when he does, he's a threat to take it to the house, and he is a freight train in the open field, but he needs to get there.
Yep.
I love what you guys are saying. In fact, I'll go ahead and jump in. We're kind of answering this question now, so we'll just stick with the running backs and just talk about another one that a lot of Cam Akers owners are going to be paying a lot of attention to. And it seems like the Frank Reich and the Colts staff likes Marlon Mack a lot, brought him back this year after his Achilles injury. And I wondered if Marlon Mack was healthy all season last year, like where would we be on the running backs? He looked like he was going to be very involved. And then I even heard, comments from Jonathan Taylor that was like, hey, Marlon Mack looks really good. He doesn't have any limitations, and he was a fan of his. Mike, this backfield, I mean, obviously we think it's going to be Jonathan Taylor leading them in rushes, but how involved do you think Marlon Mack is going to be? And do you have any optimism for how he's going to look?
I do. According to reports and, whatever those are, of course, when you're talking about camp, it's, Marlon Mack isn't looking anywhere near that you would think of someone that has that Achilles injury, like he didn't even suffer it. So Marlon Mack is very, very talented running back, very, very good in the goal line. And the difference really between sort of a Mack and a Taylor is that Mack is someone who can take it around the end, where Taylor, again, is a gap guy. So those are really the only two differences. Slight edge maybe in receptions for Taylor, but not much. They're going to want to keep these guys healthy and fresh. And if Mack is what they say he is right now, I can really see a 1A, 1B punch out of both of these guys, just like they were saying last year when Taylor was a rookie, was, Mack was going to, be a 1A and Taylor was going to be the 1B, or vice versa, depending on the week and the situation and the defense. And I still think that's a situation. That's maybe another reason why I have Taylor a little bit lower, is because I do see Mack having a big role in this offense as long as he's healthy.
Very interesting, and that's not to mention the other one. And Jacob, you can talk about Marlon Mack and talk about Nyheim Hines too, because that's another guy that is in the backfield that Frank Reich. We've mentioned him, but Frank Reich loves those kind of backs, right? Like he had that in Darren Sproles. He had it all the way back to Danny Woodhead, and when he was with the Chargers. So he likes that kind of running back. And Nyheim Hines is pretty good in his own right.
Yeah, so Hines is the guy I'm more worried about. I'm going to disagree with Mike a little bit, but I don't know. I'm not all that confident in it. I think that it's almost weird in the sense that you mentioned what would have happened if Marlon Mack would have torn his Achilles. Well, the first thing is, if Marlon Mack didn't tear his Achilles, he would not be an Indianapolis Colt this year, because he probably would have had quite a good year last year, and he would have commanded probably maybe not a huge, salary in the open market, but obviously much, much more than he got. And he would probably be the running back one on another NFL team this year, in my opinion. I think he's quite a good player. And now you have a weird situation where Taylor essentially got free run of the backfield last year because of Mac's injury. But now coming into 2021, he has to compete with Mac again when he probably wouldn't have. And it's a little bit interesting. You know, the issue with Mac, here's the thing with Mac. Prior to all these injuries, I would have said that Mac was not going to be much of a factor this year, because I was looking at, okay, what situation in the game is Mac actually a better player than Jonathan Taylor and not just a redundant asset? You know, Marlon Mack is not going to be the pass catching back anyway. He wasn't the pass catching back when he was the running back. It was still Nyheim Hines. I think he had 26 catches or 26 targets when Nyheim Hines had over 80 back in 2019 and 2018. Where I'm looking with Mac is, he is actually the shiftier runner. Like Marlon Mack always sort of remind me of like a poor man's Le'Veon Bell behind the line, where he was a little bit more patient. He was the guy who had really great vision. He was the guy who could wiggle through the holes. He was the guy who didn't necessarily need things moving in front of him to be able to find space. We missed him last year, I thought, quite a bit in the beginning of the year, where he could have added an element to the running game when the offensive line was hurt and struggling that Taylor couldn't provide, and Wilkins just can't provide. And Marlon Mack, so I would have said no, but now I'm a little weary. I think there could be a situation where if Jonathan Taylor's coming in and he's struggling, where Frank Reich's going to at least see what Marlon Mack has got. And there are areas of the running back position where Marlon Mack, if he's healthy, and it's a big if, but he does look very good in training camp, could provide a little spark that Jonathan Taylor doesn't in certain areas and certain schemes. So I think Marlon Mack could be something. Not super worried about it. If Taylor hits his ceiling and if he improves his game, then Marlon Mack is going to be there to mostly come in when Taylor needs a Gatorade. And Nyheim Hines, though, like, he's not going away. He's one of the best pass-catching running backs in the National Football League, in my opinion. I don't care how good Jonathan Taylor is. You're not taking Nyheim Hines off the field. And the problem with Nyheim Hines, too, is he is not just your standard Giovanni Bernard pass block, chip block, and check down kind of back. They run goal line packages for Nyheim Hines. They have specific schemed plays. They have scripted plays with Nyheim Hines, because people always blame the running backs coach last year, Tom Rathman, because he didn't like Taylor. Well, look, if you look at the game script, Frank Reich scripts the first 15 plays, and he picks the running back on each of those plays. And Nyheim Hines was often very active in the script in those first 15, because they run certain packages, certain schemes with Hines where they need his skill set. He's the better route runner, he's the better pass catcher, and he's the faster running back in space, at least faster from an acceleration perspective, maybe not his top speed. So Hines is going to be involved. I think Mac could be involved. But what people should remember just quickly with Mac is that people are like, why do they need Mac? They already have Taylor and Hines. Like, Hines is not the backup to Taylor. Hines is Hines, right? If Jonathan Taylor goes down, you're not giving Nyheim Hines 20 carries a game. He's a fantastic player. That's not who Nyheim Hines is. He's going to get a lot less efficient over time. We saw that 2 years ago where they tried that, and it didn't look very good. So you need a backup to Taylor who's not Hines. I think it was a feel-good story to bring Mac back in at a really affordable deal, someone who knows the system, and take care of a guy who kind of got screwed last year, really, where they drafted his replacement, and then he immediately gets hurt in a contract year.
The one thing I'm concerned about with Nyheim Hines is, can Jacob Eason drop off the ball? Can he dump off the ball like a Phillip Rivers can? And Nyheim Hines was very rarely used with Jacoby Brissett, because Brissett isn't the quarterback that can make those dump offs. So we don't know what Jacob Eason can do. And if Jacob Eason is not that type of quarterback that can get the ball off and get the ball into Nyheim Hines' hands, then Hines becomes basically useless. Because as Jacob was pointing out, Hines is only a pass catcher. He is like a Tariq Cohen. He's not going to be out there running the ball. He's not going to be doing anything else but catching that ball. And if Eason isn't the quarterback that can do that, then his value becomes, almost useless.
But I did see some reports that talk about him, being pretty excited about expanding his route tree and things like that, which was pretty good. And so that brings us into some talk about the wide receivers. So let's go ahead and jump into this about who was going to lead the team in targets. Like, this is a team that's had a little bit of turnover. People forget that the priority for the Colts in the second round in 2020 was not Jonathan Taylor. It was Michael Pittman. They drafted him first, and they had high hopes for him, right? It's going into year two. It was a tough year last year with the compartment leg syndrome. That's the thing that, Tyler Lockett bounced back from, but Hakeem Nicks never did. Jacob, what do you think? Do you think Pittman is able to be the target leader and kind of that alpha wide receiver for this team?
Man, it kills me. Like, as a Colts fan, I love 90% of the moves that Ballard makes. But as an analytical guy, the wide receivers that he picks just trigger me so immensely every single year when he just takes like whoever I hate the most in the wide receiver class. Ballard is going to get that guy on the roster and he's going to force me to cheer for him. I've been out on Pittman from jump. I never wanted any part of him in the 2020 rookie class. He was by far my least favorite wide receiver of the guys that went in the first 2 rounds. I was really hoping that they would be able to take Brandon Ayuk or T. Higgins. Ayuk was a guy I was super high on. When Higgins went right in front of us, I was a little bit crushed. I would have been very happy with Laviska Shenault. He didn't make it. I also would have been happy with Denzel Mims, which hasn't aged as well for me. But you know what? I make mistakes too. Look, Pittman to me, I'm just not really quite sure what he is. So he profiles as the larger possession wide receiver. His hands were a little bit suspect last year, and he has never been a guy who draws immense volume consistently, and that he in college even, and he certainly was not that guy in year 1. So I'm not really sure that he actually fits that. Where he was weirdly very good last year was on slant routes over the middle. Everybody's seen the reception perception chart. There's the stat about how great he was against man coverage, and he was. It's true. However, I think it's a little bit skewed because he ran a ridiculously high percentage of slants. Slants already have one of the highest success rates against man coverage of any route across the board. And so his overall success rate is really buoyed by that. And I think that people are missing that when they just see the one-line Twitter handle. But one thing that he was great at, by the way, once he won the slant route, was he was actually really good after the catch. That's not something I particularly expected with him coming out of college. So that's the biggest area where he stood out for me. However, now with Paris Campbell back in the mix, and now if he's able to somehow stay healthy, I'm not sure that that's really the role Pittman's going to play. I think that he's going to be the guy who's going to be going back outside the numbers, running the comebacks, running the curls, running down the field, running the post-up kind of X routes. I think Campbell's the guy who's going to be doing most of those inside drags and slants and yak stuff, and I'm not really sure we can expect that of Hilton. So I'm pretty low on Pittman compared to the market. Although I like his upside. The guy who I've been highest on all offseason is Campbell, just because I think he is the cheapest of the 3. And, I didn't particularly enjoy Paris Campbell's prospect profile either. But to me, I sort of look at 2 guys who have an injury history and suspect college production, but who both could feasibly lead the team in targets. But one of them goes in the 12th round, and one of them goes in the 8th. And that's just in redraft. If you look at Dynasty, the disparity is way, way, way bigger. So I'm taking shots at Campbell, and I'm kind of fading Pittman.
Yeah, Campbell, and Mark's question here, obviously, about how he's looking in camp. So far, things appear like he's healthy. So it sounds like you've got a healthy Pittman, a healthy Campbell, a healthy, if not aging, T.Y. Hilton that's out there, right? So, but Mike, talk about Michael Pittman, because 6'4", 223, 93rd percentile speed score. I mean, this is a guy that's got like 89th percentile catch radius. Like there's a lot of good measurables that are here for him that if he can't stay healthy and if he gets anything out of the quarterback position, maybe there's something here, right?
Yeah, and he looked really good in the first game last year before he went down. And so I think, he was the first round pick a couple years ago, and it's one of those things, but it's just like 10 games, I think, out of Campbell this year in his 2 years career. So you see the good, you see him being really good. It's just, how do you say, okay, this guy can translate all those measurables as you're talking about, Cal, into the pro game when he's only played 10 games in 2 years. I wish I could have a great answer here and say, okay, well, he's just going to be fantastic, but he can be. He looked good last year in that first game before he went down with an injury, but then it's just like, just don't know.
The real answer to this is nobody. If you look at through the first 10 weeks last year, they had 5 different players get a 20% target share in at least one game, and not a single player hit a 20% target share twice. That was through 10 weeks of the season, and not a single Colts pass game weapon hit a 20% target share twice. That's absolutely unthinkable. And they had injuries in that mix too, but it just really didn't matter. It was like they were thrown to whoever. And Rivers, I think, is going to do that a lot more than an Eason will, where Rivers, being a veteran, is far more adept at going through his progressions and finding whoever's open than Jacob Eason will. But here's what I'll say for Campbell. I think he's the most quarterback proof. Number one, if your offense sucks, one of the ways is to try and insert more gimmicky kind of plays to try and manufacture offense. Campbell's the clear guy that they're going to probably want to run on jet motion, on sweeps, on screens, little freebies for Jacob Eason to get himself comfortable. The other thing is he's going to be their lower ADOT guy, and he's going to be the guy on a lot less difficult throws. Pittman is a little bit more reliable on quarterback play. I expect him to be a higher ADOT guy. He's going to be doing a lot of work outside the numbers. Those are going to be higher degree of difficulty throws. I'm not sure if Eason's going to be as comfortable with that early in his career. And frankly, if he is, I'm not 100% sure he's going to be able to complete those passes consistently. And especially if they're losing games, Campbell's sort of the guy who can rack up those PPR points against soft defenses versus Pittman. And then the only other thing I would say on Campbell, why I'm more bullish on Campbell than Pittman, if you look at targets per route run, it's certainly an imperfect stat in terms of saying how good a player actually is. But just in terms of fantasy points, especially if you're in PPR leagues, targets per route run is a fairly predictive stat in terms of, is this wide receiver guy who can project to draw volume. Michael Pittman was only at 14% targets per route run in his rookie year. That's quite weak. And then Paris Campbell, while on an extremely limited sample, in his 2 seasons, he was up over 20%. So I think Campbell's a guy who might get more targets, even if from a real life perspective, a lot of those are 5-yard, dink and dunks. That's still 1.5 PPR points every time you get one.
But also it depends on where's playing where, because I think both Campbell and Pittman are short yardage guys anyways. I can see them maneuvering where Pittman is going deep, in one game, and then Campbell's doing the short routes, and then flip-flopping the next week. And as Jacob was saying, you have all these different receivers doing all these different things. None of them are target hogs by any means, because they're spreading it around. And I like what Jacob was saying. That has a lot to do with Philip Rivers just being such a high intellectual IQ guy that he can just pick and choose where the defenses is and who's the open man and hit him, in stride and doing all those things, where Eason is just going to be like, I don't care. I'm just going to latch onto somebody out there and whoever it is, and that's going to be my guy. And I'm just going to go to him consistently because that's who I need to be, and that's who I can trust, because I really don't know what the heck I'm doing out here. I don't see defenses are moving in and out and up the line of scrimmage and back from the line of scrimmage. Why are they doing that? I don't know. I'm just freaking out, and whoever's open, I'm going to hit. And, so to really in fantasy land to actually pinpoint which one of these guys is going to be the guy, it's a coin toss to me, and it could be T.Y. Hilton. I like T.Y. Hilton before Winston went down. It could be.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about good old Ghost, man. I feel exactly. We left him for dead.
We have. He's been hunted, but it's just one of those things where these Colts guys you just roll the dice and whatever lands is the guy.
I guess we haven't talked about Hilton too, because it's a dynasty show, right? And it's like, what purpose is T.Y. Hilton serving in Dynasty? Like, maybe he can be your last flex some weeks. But I don't know. It's like there's more than enough guys, I think, that are cheap at wide receiver and can be a flex, that you don't need to get a guy in T.Y. Hilton who you're never going to be able to get trade value for. Like what's the most you're going to get? If T.Y. Hilton hits his 90th percentile outcome this year, what are you getting at the trade deadline for T.Y. Hilton? A 2023 third?
Yeah, not much.
Yeah.
Yeah, not much. No, but it's worth mentioning him for a couple of reasons. One of the things that I had written down here, though, is, when we think about this value, obviously things can change, but Frank Reich is entering now into his 8th season calling plays. One time he's had 1,000-yard receiver. That was T.Y. Hilton. So, it does seem to spread the ball around and like to have like a bunch of different targets and different things. So, there was a time where I thought the answer to this question might actually be Zach Ertz. That does not appear to be a possibility anymore. But like,
I don't want it. I want to see the young guys.
Yeah. So what about the Kyle Grigson, though? I think I'm going to go over to this sleeper thing. That seems to be a decent person that could be an answer for this, but maybe it's him, maybe it's somebody else. But a lot of great quotes about him fulfilling, some interesting roles in this offense. Jacob, what do you think about him?
Dude, I love Kylan Granson. Kylan Granson is now my 3rd highest rostered dynasty player total. It goes Marquez Callaway, which that was pre-Thomas. I got a little lucky on that one. Alameda Zaccheaus, and then Kylan Granson. I was scooping him up in every 4th round of rookie drafts. I was scooping him up off of waivers in all those crappy dynasty leagues that only have 3 rookie rounds, or anyone where I traded my 4th round pick. Like I'm all about it with Kylan Granson, man. Wentz, whenever he ends up starting games again, we know he likes to target the tight end. We know that Frank Reich loves to scheme routes for the tight end, and we know that they don't have any wide receivers that we can be super confident are going to be volume hogs in this offense, right? We got young and unproven, we got young and injured, we got old and injured. So the door is wide open for one of these tight ends to come in and actually get a lot of targets. Like I have this weird conspiracy theory about the draft where I really wanted them to draft a wide receiver because I'm just not particularly enthused about our wide receiver room. And I really wanted them to put in the effort to make sure that Wentz had all the weapons he would need. I have a conspiracy theory that Ballard might not have been quite as excited about the Wentz trade as Reich. And he was like, look, Frank, if I'm giving away a 1 and a 3 to go get your quarterback, then you're going to make it work with the weapons. And Frank was like, no, give me 1. And he was like, you can have a 4th round pick. And Frank was like, I want this old ass tight end out of Southern Methodist.
Right.
Short. I want Kylan Granson. And Chris was like, fine, Frank, you can have your Kylan Granson and then shut up and go make me an offense. So I think that's maybe 5% true. But then when I got into Kylan Granson, first I was like, what? Who the hell is this guy? And why do they draft him over Brevin Jordan? And then I went and looked into him. Like, he's a real athletic dude. And the way that they scheme things in this offense, right? Each tight end has a role. And Mo Alley Cox, as much as Twitter adores him, and trust me, I adore him too. Look, I think the Jack Doyle era, if we can call Jack Doyle as being deserving of having an era named after him, I think that era is over. Trey Burton is gone. I think Mo Alley Cox is actually a really excellent blocker. I think he's going to be doing a lot of blocking, and they'll work him into the receiving game. But Granson, even if he's only playing 30% of the snaps, I think whenever he is out there, he's running a route. And Frank Reich is really innovative in how he schemes tight ends. He's going to have a lot of action going in the short range of the field, especially if there's a healthy Paris Campbell with Pittman running those routes with Hines. And he's going to open up areas where the safety has to make a choice. And you're going to have Kylan Granson running free up the seam with that 4.6 speed. And they're going to be shooting it up over the top to Granson. I could easily see a scenario where he's not playing a lot of snaps, but he's running a lot of routes. And when he's on the field, he's going to get schemed for, and he's going to get targeted in the flow of the offense. I'm not saying he's going to be like a tight end 1 this year or anything, but we're going to see enough flashes, I think, out of Kylan Granson, where he's going to be that guy like a Troutman or a Kmet is this offseason, where people are really talking themselves into him next year. And so you can get Kylan Granson virtually for free this year. You get to have a look at him, and he's a guy where easily I could see you might be able to get a 2nd round pick for next offseason, or if he looks good enough, maybe you just want to roll with him.
Yeah, talk about Granson a little bit, Mike, and then 15 touchdowns in 2 years in college. Like, he was a pretty good receiver in that, especially in the red zone. And there's talk about him being in the Trey Burton role this year, which I thought I didn't know that was somebody deserving of a role, but okay.
They didn't think so either. That's why they got Granson to replace him. Now it's the Granson role.
Yeah, I think what they probably meant there with Burton was Burton did a lot of the quarterback work, especially near the goal line, where he would come in and you get the snap and either pass or run. As Jacob said, Kylan Granson is someone that's in between the 20s kind of guy. He's just way too short, isn't big enough to block out during the goal line area, and that's going to be Alley Cox, especially as Twitterverse loves that wingspan of Alley Cox, and rightfully so. It's an eagle size kind of wingspan, and he has the height and boxing out ability. He was a former college tight end, so he knows how to do all those great things that they need at the goal line. In between 20s, Granson, he's only, I think, 6'2".
Real short for a tight end.
Yeah, he's tiny. He's like Irv Smith kind of tight end kind of guy. So it's you're just not going to get the touchdowns out of him. Jack Doyle is there to catch a pass and fall down. So you're not going to get a lot of probably receptions out of Granson. But as a sleeper goes, and that's the question being framed, I really, really like Kylan Granson. I think Carp did a really good article on DLF about that. So check that out. And if there's a sleeper, the only other sleeper that I think that's getting a lot of buzz is also a draft pick that they did, I believe, in the 7th round. Michael Straxton. out of Division II school. What's the college? You know,
Charleston. He went to Charleston College.
Charleston, and he looks like a great deep threat. Can get down the field. He's like talking about small Kylan Granson. Strachan is just the opposite.
He could play tight end.
Yeah, 6'5", 224.
He's a massive freaking dude.
He is huge, and all the camp is a buzz about him getting downfield. And so, as we're talking about a free space, Mike Strachan, free space.
Here, I'll actually give a quick shout out to my guy Cody Carpentier. The Rooster, he'll be on. I'm going to be on 2 podcasts with him on Tuesday because I'm going on his show, Early Risers, and then he's coming on my show, Dynasty Intervention, right after. And I cannot wait to talk to him about Michael Strawn. I think it's pronounced Strawn, but I could be totally off on that. But whatever, Strachan, Strawn, Strachan, whoever it is. There is nobody on earth who was earlier on this dude than Cody Carpentier. Even back before the draft, back in February, he was doing podcasts on his show, Undercovered Prospects, talking about Michael Strawn / Strachan. And I'm super, super pumped to talk to him about this guy because I didn't know anything about him until Cody said something. And when Cody talks, I listen. So I was like, okay, who's this dude out of Charleston that Cody thinks is good? And then the Colts took him in round 7. I was like, sweet, he's going to be a Pro Bowler, or more likely he's going to be Deion Kane all over again. But we'll see how it goes.
Well, we'll all hope that the Colts release the Strachan. And going back to your comment about wingspan, Mo Alley Cox, 35 7/8 was his wingspan. Kyle Pitts, 33.5. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
We
Kyle.
think about,
what the hell's wrong with you, dude?
Yeah. Move him down your boards immediately, just hearing that one stat. But no. So this answer might just be what we talked about at the beginning. Like we kind of talked about if somebody on this team is going to bust, I guess Jonathan Taylor might be a decent option for that. And when we say bust, it doesn't mean that we think he's going to be a bad running back. And like Mike said, I think the important thing is in Dynasty, we're not like selling Jonathan Taylor at this point, like unless you're getting 3 first for him. But redraft this year could be kind of interesting with these injuries, and it seems like foot injuries tend to linger. So anybody else on this team you think about as far as a bust, guys? Like, is that kind of the full list? Or Mike, do you have anybody else?
I think that's the full list because like anybody else that you're drafting, like especially and if you're talking like redraft, they're like wide receiver 55. So
right.
I mean, how much bust can you get with a wide receiver 55 kind of guy?
Right.
Yeah, I would say that Taylor's probably the one and only.
Yeah, I mean, Taylor's the answer almost by default because nobody else carries a very hard investment. From a dynasty perspective, that changed a little bit. If Wentz really struggles to come back from this foot injury, and then especially if he doesn't perform well while playing through the foot injury, we could see his value really, really tank. But I'm not even that concerned about Wentz. I think that they're going to make sure that Wentz is the starting quarterback next year, no matter what. So I'm not really sure how low his value could get. I guess my other pick beyond Taylor, mostly just because I think Taylor is awesome. So I think from a dynasty perspective, he's priced really, really high. But I think when people start to get healthy, he's going to remind people why he is that consensus top 3 dynasty running back. And yes, my pick would be Pittman. I know I'm a bit of a Pittman hater, but look, we see with wide receivers, rookie wide receivers, especially if they're drafted highly, if they do like literally anything, they have pretty good insulated value going from year 1 to year 2. And so Pittman, who is an early 2nd round pick in last year's rookie drafts for Superflex, basically retained the exact same value coming into this year. I've seen people trade future firsts for him. I've seen people trade multiple seconds for him. If he doesn't improve from last year's figures, then he will be a very, very late round pick, kind of like a Paris Campbell is this year. So I think it's put up or shut up for Pittman in Dynasty. And, I'm not particularly bullish on him, even though he definitely has the opportunity to prove me wrong. So I guess I'll say Pittman just because Taylor's kind of already taken. Yeah.
So this answer has changed a lot here recently. So last year, 11-5, and I mean, it was I feel like it was a pretty good year, I would say, for the Colts, and but a lot.
It's a loss to the Jaguars in Week 1.
Yeah, a lot bigger hopes for the Colts this year until this recent string of injuries. But Mike, I'll let you go first. What do you think with a 17-game season? What do you think the record for this team might be?
Thank you for saying 17-game season, because I think all year long I'm going to be 12-4, 8-8.
I really hope you're thinking 12-4.
Right? Yeah. So I they have
anguish,
schedule,
anguish
dude.
right there.
This is hurting. This is like from the gut here. This is my. I'm 7-10.
7-10, potentially getting off to a rough start then, right? Like,
and the schedules,
the opening 5 games are absolutely awful.
They get
just awful.
It's
Seattle, Baltimore, the 49ers, the Titans, and one other team.
Rams are week 2.
And Rams. Okay, so it's Seattle, Rams, Titans, Baltimore, Niners. Is that I don't know if that's the order, but
Dolphins,
that's
Texans, Dolphins get in there week 6, luckily.
Okay, so the Niners are week 7. Okay, my bad. So it's the Dolphins instead of the Niners. So it's Seattle, Rams, Baltimore, Dolphins, and Titans are the first 5. I mean, and conceivably Wentz and Nelson could miss all 5. So my answer changes depending on when they come back and when they actually look like themselves. But he said 7-10
arrives.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard. Like I actually thought that Vegas was overrating the Colts a little bit to begin with. I think that the expectation was they'd be better than last year, and I'm not entirely sure why that was the expectation. Phillip Rivers was actually quite good last year, and the team was, barring a couple games and a couple COVID scares, was mostly healthy last year, and they didn't really add anybody of consequence. Like they lost Justin Houston. They didn't replace him except for with their first round pick. I'm not really sure, how much you can expect Kwity Paye to deliver in year 1. And their wide receiver group didn't improve, and I thought that was one of their other big weaknesses last year. So I'm not sure. I guess you're depending on some progression from guys like Rock Ya-Sin, from Pittman, from Campbell. Like you're expecting sort of the first, second round picks of the last 2 years to really bring you improvement, I suppose. And I don't know. I thought they were like a 9-8, 10-7 team before this. And now the issue is, it's one thing if I just say, okay, I thought they were going to go, 2-3 in the first 5 games. Now they go 1-4. The issue is if they do go 1-4, 0-5, then you just have the spiral effect, right? It's like now if you're 0-5, do you still bring Wentz back as early as you can? Does the team start, just losing confidence? Do you start losing the locker room? And we've seen these things go from bad to worse where everything spirals. So I think 7-10 is probably a pretty good guess, even though I think this team, if definitely has the talent to be much more than that.
The defense could be really good. I think that's the, if you're going to be optimistic, that's probably what you're going to be hanging your hat on, is hopefully it's a really good defensive unit. One of the more underrated groups, I think, in the league. And you mentioned Kwity Paye, and I think there's a lot of reason to be excited about him. I kind of liked his college tape and liked what I saw out of him. So, we'll see. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Jacob Eason performs. And then, like you said, what's the record, and does that slow down bringing Carson Wentz? Does all of a sudden his foot injury need a little bit longer to heal if things get off to a slow start? And then you get your first round pick back, right?
Yeah. I mean, here's the issue with the defense. Leonard is hurt right now, and he is so essential to this defense. When he missed games last year, this defense was not remotely the same. The Colts secondary is actually quite bad. Their pass defense was good, but I don't think that is indicative of their skill level. I think Eberflus is a fantastic coordinator, and what they take advantage of is that Okereke and Leonard have absolutely incredible foot speed from the linebacker position, and so they play. They play a ton of zone coverage in the cover 2, and they basically expect, okay, we're going to make life very easy on our corners. They're going to play off coverage on wide receivers, and they're going to play back. And we're going to trust that Leonard and Okereke are going to be able to cover a crap ton of space inside to be able to make up for it. They're going to be able to tackle ball carriers quick. They're going to be able to run with tight ends and with running backs in the open field and hold up in coverage. And when they're healthy, it works. When Leonard is hurt, and he is often hurt, and so it terrifies me that he is already hurt and can't, the entire system falls apart because our secondary cannot hold up if they continue to ask them to be in man coverage. It only works if we have linebackers with speed who can attack the ball carriers. Because otherwise we just get beat short over and over and over and over and over again. I remember I saw this on the Ravens game. They came out in the first half. They were playing the Ravens absolutely terrifically. Leonard got hurt, and he played through the injury for the rest of the game. You could tell he wasn't the same guy, and they're just getting churned on these 12, 14 play drives. if Leonard's situation doesn't improve, or if he gets hurt, or if Okereke gets hurt, who I think is one of the most under-discussed players on this Colts team because he plays in the same position group as Leonard, but he's essential to this defense when it's cooking. If they're injured, it's a precarious defense. Like this, the talent is up the middle. It's not on the edges, and it's not really in the secondary.
Mike, last word on the Colts.
Good luck. Yeah, I hope we can at least split those first 6-7 games. If we can split those first 6-7 games, then I think it's going to be optimistic. I do believe Philip Rivers is going to come back.
Oh, that would be awesome.
And if we can hold fort, and I think he'll be back around that time, they might make the playoffs. We'll see.
So if he comes back, I mean, that's about the same time frame that when he was talking about the time frame. It's like the same as when Wentz would come back, right? Like, why does that make sense?
I think what it is exactly what Jacob was saying. I think they're going to say, you know what? Your foot is hurt. We really don't, want you to press it. We're going to have you back next year. We hope that you're going to be part of our team, not only next year, but in the future. Just relax, rest it, and then we'll come back next season.
That's why you guys are the best. I think you guys saw right there from at RFL Red Zone and Jacob at FF_RTDB. That's why you need to be following these guys. They're really smart. They know what they're talking about and really good at breaking things down and helping us win fantasy football games. I'm at Calvin and Hobby. You can find me there at Twitter. And you should also be following DLF's Twitter account at DL Football. If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and do it. Just make sure you hit the subscribe button right down there. Hit the thumbs up button. Put a couple comments in there. Helps the YouTube algorithm. That's what they tell me. And more people will be able to see this. It would be really nice if you did that. Thank you very much. So we've only got like 4 of these left. We're almost there. We've got 28 of these. Only four to go. A lot of those are going to be coming at you, all 4 of them, next week after we get our first real football game tomorrow, guys. Are we stoked or what?
Heck yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
we get Peyton Manning, talking. We get Adrian James going in the whole game. Great times.
All right. So for these guys, for Dynasty League Football, I appreciate you guys tuning